The Buffalo Bills are undefeated at 3-0, heading into a pivotal Week 4 matchup against the Saints, but just days before kickoff, roster moves, injuries, and even a big-name free agent DB have put Buffalo right in the spotlight. Could this be the move that pushes the Bills toward a Super Bowl run, or a gamble that risks their locker room chemistry? The Buffalo Bills have officially lost a piece of depth on their offensive line. Dan Feeney, who had been sitting on the practice squad, has been poached by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and signed directly onto their 53-man active roster. From Tampa Bay's perspective, this move makes complete sense. The Buccaneers are dealing with a major offensive line crisis. They're already down 3 starters, and it showed in their Week 3 game against the Jets. The unit struggled heavily, not only with protection but also with discipline. Baker Mayfield wasn't necessarily getting sacked on every dropback, but the penalties were piling up and completely killing drives. The offensive line looked patchwork, and Tampa desperately needed bodies who have been practicing and staying ready. For Buffalo, the loss of Feeney stings because he was a player they valued as reliable depth. While he hadn't cracked the active roster in Buffalo, he provided security in case of injuries. Now, with him leaving for Tampa Bay, the Bills' front office is left with the challenge of finding another backup option they can trust if their own offensive line runs into health issues later this season. In short, the Buccaneers get insurance for their injury-riddled front, while the Bills lose a player they would have preferred to keep in the building. To replace the loss of Dan Feeney, the Bills turn to a familiar face, Nick Broeker. Buffalo decided to bring him back and sign him to the practice squad. Broeker is no stranger to Western New York. He was originally a 7th-round draft pick by the Bills in 2023, though he didn't stick on the roster in his rookie year. Instead, he ended up in Houston, where he spent the 2023 and 2024 seasons with the Texans. What makes Broeker an appealing option for Buffalo is his durability and consistency in college. During his time at Ole Miss, he never missed a single start, playing in 48 straight games. That level of reliability is exactly what teams look for in a depth offensive lineman. Now, by bringing Broeker back, the Bills have a low-risk insurance policy for their offensive line. If injuries pop up later in the season, and history says they always do, Buffalo now has a durable, battle-tested option waiting in the building. It's not a headline-grabbing move, but it's the kind of smart roster management that keeps the Bills prepared for the grind of a long season. With Nick Broeker coming back into the fold, the Bills needed to make room on the practice squad. The odd man out turned out to be cornerback Jalen Kimber, who was waived after a short stint with the team. Kimber's journey has been a quick one. He originally entered the league as a 2025 undrafted free agent, first landing with the Tennessee Titans before making his way to Buffalo. Unfortunately, his time with the Bills never really got off the ground. He joined during the preseason, but fans didn't get to see much of him on the field. This move doesn't come as a huge surprise, given the limited exposure Kimber had and the fact that the Bills needed to make space for other signings. Still, at just the start of his NFL career, Kimber will likely get another opportunity elsewhere as he continues his journey. For Buffalo, this was more about reshuffling resources, letting go of a young corner so they could strengthen depth at other, more immediate positions of need. The Bills didn't just stop with Nick Broeker. They also added another name to the practice squad, linebacker Otis Reese IV. Reese comes in with NFL experience from his time with the Tennessee Titans. He was an undrafted free agent in 2023 but managed to stick, eventually playing in 13 games and even starting 3 of them. Over the 2024 season, he recorded 17 tackles and made a highlight moment with his first career interception against the Jaguars on December 8, 2024. What really makes Reese valuable, though, is his ability to contribute on special teams. Back in 2023, he finished 4th on the Titans in special teams tackles with 5. That kind of production is crucial for a Bills team that relies heavily on depth players to fill multiple roles. This signing also comes at a time when Buffalo's linebacker room is dealing with some injuries. Matt Milano remains sidelined, and Keenan Jenkins, who plays a critical role on special teams, has also been banged up. In that sense, Reese feels like a smart piece of insurance, especially for Jenkins, giving the Bills another reliable body who can step in if called upon. He's versatile, too. Originally a safety in college, Reese has transitioned to linebacker, which gives him solid coverage skills and a natural fit for special teams. If Buffalo needs someone to step in right away, he's capable of making plays in the kicking game and even taking some defensive snaps if the situation demands it. In short, Reese is the type of under-the-radar signing that could pay off later in the season, particularly if injuries continue to pile up at linebacker. One name Bills fans continue to watch closely is wide receiver Gabe Davis. After suffering a knee injury, Davis is still working his way back to full health. His timeline isn't completely clear, but there is optimism he could be elevated soon if his recovery continues in the right direction. Getting Davis back would be a meaningful boost for Buffalo's passing game. Right now, Stefon Diggs remains the go-to target, and Khalil Shakir has carved out an important role. But the Bills are still waiting to see Curtis Samuel activated, which leaves the receiver rotation thinner than they'd like. If Davis is able to return, he provides not just another body at wideout, but also a trusted target for Josh Allen, someone who can stretch the field, win contested catches, and take pressure off Diggs. His presence would also help balance the offense and give Buffalo more flexibility in different personnel packages. In short, Davis's return isn't just about depth, it could give the Bills an extra spark in the passing game as they push to stay undefeated. Another receiver to keep an eye on is Curtis Samuel. So far, Samuel has not yet been activated, which means the Bills' wide receiver rotation is still a work in progress. His speed and versatility could add a new wrinkle to the offense, but until he's cleared, Buffalo will continue to lean on Diggs, Shakir, and potentially Gabe Davis if he returns soon. Beyond the wideouts, the Bills have also leaned on some familiar reinforcements. Earlier this year, they brought back defensive tackle Jordan Phillips, a player who once had the reputation of being a locker room problem but has since become a strong cultural fit in Buffalo. His return serves as an example of how the Bills' coaching staff and locker room can reshape a player's narrative, turning what was once a concern into a strength. These moves highlight Buffalo's commitment to depth and culture. The front office isn't just filling roster spots, they're making sure the players they bring in can contribute on the field while also buying into the team-first mentality that defines this Bills squad. One of the more surprising developments across the league came out of Houston, where the Texans released safety C.J. Gardner-Johnson. What made this move stand out is the timing. The Texans had just traded for him earlier in 2025, hoping his playmaking ability would stabilize their secondary. Instead, after only 3 games, they decided to cut ties, raising plenty of eyebrows around the NFL. The reasoning behind the move becomes clearer when you look at his on-field performance. According to PFF, Gardner-Johnson carried an overall grade of just 59, with a 58.9 mark in coverage. Those numbers reflect what the tape showed: too many missed assignments and blown coverages, including a costly breakdown against the Jaguars that exposed Houston's defense. That being said, Gardner-Johnson wasn't without positives. He still flashed his physicality as a run defender and showed value as a blitzer from the secondary, traits that have always been part of his game. But the inconsistency in coverage proved too much for the Texans to overlook, especially for a team that has playoff aspirations and little margin for defensive lapses. Now, as he hits the open market, Gardner-Johnson's name becomes one to watch. For teams in need of a versatile defensive back, the question is whether his recent struggles are a short-term slump, or a sign of deeper concerns about his ability to anchor a secondary. Beyond the numbers, another concern with C.J. Gardner-Johnson has been locker room dynamics. Reports out of Houston pointed to a troubling trend. Instead of showing accountability for mistakes, he was often finger-pointing at teammates. That type of behavior wears thin in an NFL locker room, especially when the production isn't matching the reputation. Some voices around the league have gone as far as to label him a locker room cancer, which is a heavy tag for any player trying to land his next opportunity. But here's the other side of the coin: Gardner-Johnson has proven before that he can be a difference maker. Just last year, in 2024, he posted 6 interceptions and 12 pass breakups, reminding everyone of his ball-hawking instincts that have been there since 2021. He might not be elite at this stage of his career, but he's still serviceable and impactful, especially for teams that know how to put him in the right situations. And we've seen this type of story play out in Buffalo before. Think back to Jordan Phillips, who was once doubted, only to return to the Bills and carve out a productive role while bringing energy to the locker room. For Gardner-Johnson, a similar redemption arc isn't out of the question. It just depends on the environment he walks into and how much trust a coaching staff is willing to extend. The biggest obstacle for the Bills in a potential C.J. Gardner-Johnson signing isn't his talent, it's the salary cap. Right now, Buffalo sits at about $1.5 million in available space, which means they can't even add a veteran minimum contract without first creating room. That would require some maneuvering from Brandon Beane, possibly a restructure, a small trade, or even an early extension to free up dollars. While Gardner-Johnson likely won't command big money, especially since the Texans still owe him guaranteed cash, it's still a financial hurdle in the middle of the season. If the Bills can make it work, though, the fit is intriguing. Gardner-Johnson profiles as a strong scheme match in Sean McDermott's defense, with the versatility to cover, blitz, and play downhill against the run. In fact, he might already be a better option than rookie Cole Bishop, who's still learning on the fly. Adding him would also give depth to a thin safety room and help limit the costly mistakes we've seen from Taylor Rapp at times. In short, if the front office can find the money, Gardner-Johnson could be more than just a depth signing. He could provide an immediate upgrade and stability at a position that needs it. When you step back and look at the big picture, the Buffalo Bills are walking a fine line between culture and talent. Every roster move they've made in the past week, from practice squad shuffling to depth signings, reflects a front office preparing for the grind of a long season. They're making sure that when injuries hit, there are reinforcements already in place. That brings us back to the C.J. Gardner-Johnson debate. The decision isn't just about his skill set, it's about what he brings, or takes away, from the locker room. On one hand, his ball production speaks for itself. On the other, his reputation for finger-pointing and tension could clash with the culture Sean McDermott has worked to build. Then there's the financial piece. With the Bills currently sitting at negative cap space, Brandon Beane would need to do some serious maneuvering to make it work. That means the front office has two key questions to answer. Do they believe Gardner-Johnson's talent outweighs the risk, and can they clear the space in time to bring him in? That's the balance point, and the outcome of that decision could quietly shape how far this Bills team goes in 2025.